Have you ever seen a ghost? Not the kind that rattles chains, but the living, breathing kind, the ghost of the person you promised your life to. I saw one. I was standing under the flickering departures board at O. Hair, a bouquet of her favorite lilies wilting in my hand, my phone buzzing with a text from her saying she was too sick to even lift her head from the pillow. That's when I saw her. My wife, Sarah, looking radiant and healthy, her blonde hair catching the terminal lights as she laughed, leaning into a man I'd never seen before. He was older, silver at the temples, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back. They were gliding toward Gate K-12, the flight to Cancun. And in that single, heart-shattering moment, the man who had left his office in downtown Chicago to care for his sick wife died. And someone else, something colder and far more patient, was born. If you genuinely enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel. Tell us where you're from, not what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to know how far our story flows. The signs had been there, of course, scattered like breadcrumbs I'd been too blind to see. The late nights, she claimed, were spent with girlfriends from her marketing firm. The sudden obsession with a new, expensive perfume that smelled of vanilla and something metallic, like ambition. Her phone, once a shared space for silly photos and notes, became a fortress, angled away from me on the couch, its screen going dark the second I entered the room. When I'd ask, she'd deploy that weaponized smile. Trust issues, honey, making me feel like the villain. She was a master of it, turning my concern into paranoia, my love into a leash she was desperate to cut. The man from the airport, I soon learned, was Mark, a senior partner at a rival firm. He was everything I wasn't told: money, ruthlessly charming, and dripping with the kind of casual arrogance that comes from never having been told no. Their affair wasn't just a fling. It was a business merger of souls, and I was the asset being liquidated. One night I found a receipt for a hotel I knew we'd never visited, the Peninsula, right off Michigan Avenue. A 2-night stay. Room service for 2. Champagne. The dates aligned perfectly with a work conference she'd supposedly attended in Schaumburg. The humiliation was a physical thing, a hot sickness that coiled in my gut. They weren't just cheating. They were laughing at me. They felt untouchable, wrapped in their bubble of expensive dinners and secret trips, while I paid the mortgage on our Lincoln Park brownstone. That night, kneeling on the cold bathroom floor with that piece of paper shaking in my hand, was the last time I cried. The tears stopped, and a terrifying clarity took their place. They had written their story. Now I would write the ending. My grief hardened into a diamond-edged purpose. I became a ghost in my own home, playing the part of the oblivious, loving husband. I brought her soup when she was sick, listened to her fabricated stories about work, and smiled until my face ached. All the while, I was gathering my arsenal. I hired a private investigator, a grizzled ex-cop who documented every clandestine meeting, every lunch at a secluded booth in a River North steakhouse, every weekend trip disguised as a solo retreat. I opened a new bank account, quietly siphoning my salary. I contacted a forensic accountant to trace the money Sarah had been pulling from our joint savings, funneling it into a private account under her maiden name. The final piece of the puzzle was their biggest gamble yet. Sarah's firm was competing against Mark's for a massive city development contract, a billion-dollar deal that would reshape a corner of the Chicago skyline. I discovered through carefully recovered emails that they were colluding. Sarah was feeding Mark insider information, sabotaging her own company SBED in exchange for a guaranteed executive position at his firm once the deal was secured. It was corporate espionage, a felony, and it was my masterpiece. The trap was set for the annual real estate gala, a black tie affair at the Navy Pier Ballroom. It was the night the winning bid for the city contract was to be announced. Sarah was electric, draped in a backless gown, Mark by her side, the conquering hero. They thought it was their coronation. I had arranged for everything. I'd sent anonymous, evidence-backed dossiers to the board members of both companies, the city council, and 3 major news outlets, all embargoed until 9 p.m. that night. As the CEO of Mark's company took the stage to accept the now-tainted award, phones began to light up across the ballroom. A wave of whispers turned into a roar. I watched from the back of the room as Sarah's face went from triumph to confusion, then to ashen horror as she saw the news alert on her own phone. Her picture, next to Mark's, under a headline about corporate fraud. The CEO stopped his speech, his face a mask of fury. Security was already moving toward them. Mark, the smug coward, tried to back away from her, to sever himself from the explosion, but it was too late. I saw her look for me then, her eyes scanning the crowd with frantic desperation. I let her see me. I stood there, holding a simple glass of water, and gave her a slow, deliberate nod. It was the only confession she would ever get. The fallout was biblical. They were both fired, their careers incinerated. The city voided the contract, and both firms were buried under federal investigations and shareholder lawsuits. Sarah, stripped of her reputation and her ill-gotten money, was left with nothing but legal bills and the suffocating weight of public shame. I filed for divorce the next morning, the terms of which were brutal and non-negotiable, enforced by the mountain of evidence I had. She was left with nothing. I sold the brownstone and moved away from the city, leaving the ghosts of Chicago behind. Sometimes, late at night, I think of her. I don't feel anger anymore, or even satisfaction. I just feel the profound, chilling quiet of a house that has been swept clean. The end.